Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Spiritual Business Blueprint. Today, we're going to be talking about Pluto and empowerment and how it can affect you becoming an authority as a healer, as an entrepreneur, as well as navigating career transitions. Hi, I'm Tracey-Ann Rose, and I help spiritual high-achieving women of color break through income ceilings by tapping into their intuition without burning down their business. Today, I have the pleasure of interviewing the wonderful Christina Caudill. Christina Caudill has been an evolutionary astrologer for over a decade and is the host of the RadiantAstrology podcast on YouTube and Spotify. Christina, so happy to have you here.
Hi, Tracey-Ann. Thank you so much for having me. It's so good to see you.
Good to see you. For those of you who don't know, I've been a client with Christina for I think over 10 years now. I think we met over 10 years ago.
Yeah, it's been a long while.
It's been a beautiful journey. Christina is an amazing astrologer. I'm so grateful to have gotten to experience her gifts over the years and just continue to see you thrive. Can you share a little bit with those listening how you got started?
Gosh, I was thinking about this before we got on the call because it's such a long, winding process. But how I got started as an astrologer, it has always been kind of a hobby passion of mine. Like I even remember in college, I would sometimes stumble on like astrology books or something, astrology magazines or something, and I would just delve into it. But then I'd be like, okay, I got to stop because this is not worth my time. It's like wasting time. I should be studying business and marketing and, and my French, I was a minor. And so I kept being like, it was like a guilty pleasure. And so fast forward, to my working adult life, my husband and I ran an art gallery in Atlanta for many years. And I was always perfectly happy with it all being about him, right? Because he was the curator, he selected the artists. I just did everything to help make it happen, to help make the platform happen, to let everybody know about the exhibitions and anything he needed to support him. And I was, for many years, I was satisfied with that. But I came to a realization that it was because I thought I wasn't creative. I didn't know what creativity looked like for me. I knew for him and all these artists, they knew what creativity was for them. They knew that, and so many of them were so passionate and driven, even in the face of, not making much money or not knowing if anything would ever pan out. And I really admired that, but that just was
Yeah.
my perspective. But eventually, something finally kind of just started like, you first get that little dissatisfaction, kind of the gnawing sense of there is something more. And it wasn't until, and then I started getting back into astrology again. I don't know what opened it up for me, but I think maybe I just had some spare time, and that's where my mind would go when I did have some free time. And then at one point, my back was up against the wall. We had an exhibition over the summer that didn't pan out. And I basically was like, oh my God, we were like counting on this, on, these sales, whatever, with this
Yeah.
artwork to take us through the summer. And I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And I had already been toying around with astrology and talking and meeting some other metaphysical types. I just said, you know what? Why don't I just offer some readings? I knew enough by that time.
I love that.
I just shared what I knew. I just did the little bit that I knew, and it went, bananas from there. But I didn't charge much. I didn't promise much. But I just found like, oh my God, I love this. And also at the time I was already going through training for life coaching and things like that. And even though
Yeah.
I liked it, there was always something missing. There was like a missing piece. And it turned out it was astrology. And so that was a few years of just experimenting, second guessing things. But then when everything kind of gives you that spark of like, oh, this lights me up and it helps other people, then I realized I am creative. It just looks differently for me than, for maybe other people. And so I found my creative spark through that. And that was in probably, I think 2011 was when I really started kind of
Okay.
really kind of toying around with it. But then it was a few more years before I really called myself a professional astrologer, and that was 2014. And luckily by that time, I started finding the right mentors, the right teachers, the right teachings and books and things like that, that just took things up, another notch, another notch, another notch until I really felt that I had something really valuable to offer.
Oh my goodness. I love that you got started before you had all the answers. You're like, I'm just going to teach from what I know. How can you what would you say to somebody who's in the stage where they're excited about something, they're learning about something, or maybe they've been learning about it for a long time and they're like nervous to get started? What would you recommend for them?
The first thing I do, because I'm also a trained Jungian dream analysis or analyst, and I don't know
So
if I can call
cool.
myself an analyst. I would call myself a dream coach or whatever. You can't really use that, but basically, it's when they were in school. And it's not really something I do necessarily. I don't necessarily take clients on from that, but um, there's so much that our dreams are trying to tell us
Yes,
every single
100%.
night. And of course, the first thing a lot of people say, unless they've already been exploring it, a lot of people say, "Oh, I don't dream. I don't remember my dreams." I'm telling you,
Yeah.
that's what I said even just a few years ago.
Really?
And then I took this dream program, a year-long dream school, and once you set the intention, they start coming, and I'm telling you, they can start really coming fast and furious. Like every night, I was like, I didn't even process the one from last night or last week, and now there's more coming. But it, you know what? What I think is so amazing about our dreams is the unconscious is really trying to guide us. And I say that because, don't wait until you have to be like I said, I was in a rock and a hard place before I actually
Yeah.
got out and said, I actually had, dug deep enough and found the courage enough to do, to share my gifts. And yeah, and maybe we resist until, until the sky falls in on us or something
Right.
like that. But I would ask for dreams. Yeah, I would start with dreams because maybe there is something that is aligning on your inside that hasn't quite ripened enough for your consciousness. So I would set an intention and, for maybe every night for a week before you go to bed, ask your dreams to give you an unmistakable sign through your dreams about what your next step is or what your opportunity is, or whatever that question is that you think
Yeah.
is, the barrier between you and sharing your gifts.
Yeah, I really love that. I love dream work. Have you noticed that certain signatures, 'cause I've noticed like certain signatures, like people with a lot of Pisces that they dream and Scorpio dream very deeply and almost like otherworldly. Like they'll talk about other dimensions, past lives. Have you noticed anything like that in your experience?
Hmm. I just started a series I think in the fall with a colleague of mine, Melissa LaFera, also an astrologer. And we both did dream school together. And we just started looking at astrology, natal charts and people's dreams, because I don't think there's not a lot of people doing that, or at least not putting it out there. But so we're still kind of exploring that. And I will say that generally, yes, we associate Pisces and Neptune with dreams. Like even if I look at by transit. If there's some kind of Neptunian transit, for instance, especially when Neptune was in Pisces, it was like unmistakable.
Yeah.
Neptune was stationing, retrograde or direct. If it was aspecting, the sun or one of the personal planets, in a hard aspect or even a trine, like people would start like saying, like spewing out their dreams. It might be a little bit different now that Neptune's in a fire sign. I think that more that our dreams and the dream material is kind of coming out in a fire way in things like our motivation and our anxieties and things like that. But getting back to your question, I don't know that I've studied it enough. I will say that, you know, if you have a lot of mutable energy, right? Like the mutable signs, like you were saying, Virgo and Pisces, um, and, Gemini and Sagittarius, likely, especially if it's your personal planets, you may have more ability to easily access these realms, I would imagine. And I
Okay.
think that those of us with fixed signs, that's why for me, I had to be between a rock and a hard place, to really access my gifts is because I have so much fixed signs that really resist, even if I know that there is something, on the other side for me. I'll resist and resist and resist until I'm ready to, give it full force. But I think that we all have the potential to dream. And I think a lot of us may be in denial just because we might not recognize what it's like to dream constantly. But I think everybody can remember having a dream that just woke them up in a way or just said, wow, I had this really crazy, weird dream last night. And it might not have made any sense at the time, but I would challenge people to look back at any dream that maybe, even if it was, bewildering, to now with hindsight, if you were to look at the dream metaphorically, what was it trying to tell you? If it was like a friend who really cared about you, like a bestie, like a ride or die,
Yeah.
who really
Yeah.
wanted to help guide you, what would it be telling you? And so usually with hindsight, we can easily see. Like I've had some dreams that just I wanted to figure it out, like to put the puzzle and it didn't make any sense. And that's why I'll record them. And then maybe months later I'll go back and it'll like be blatantly obvious, like, oh yeah, I was like really struggling at work because I was new and I didn't know the environment. And that was just kind of showing me how I was feeling but in kind of a comical way. I remember I had one where I was
Yeah.
like on a bicycle on a highway. I was at a new job for a couple of months and I was in the dream, I was driving a bicycle on the highway and it kept falling off, like little
Oh
parts of it kept
no.
falling and it was like wobbling and everything. And then it became a unicycle. And I mean, it was just like comical. But I think it was just telling me, "Don't take yourself too seriously." Like, yeah, you're on a new path. You're, out of your depths a bit, but like you don't have to take it so seriously. And I look back and I can laugh at it
Yeah.
now.
And like let yourself be a beginner, like these cars have been driving on the highway, you're on a bicycle. Let's let yourself catch up and let yourself like gain momentum at this speed before trying to, I don't know, that's just what came up to me before trying to be as fast as the cars.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's great,
That's
to
so
share it
interesting.
with a friend too, to see what they're picking up. I mean, of course,
Yeah.
now you can put anything in AI or apps or whatever. And I do like to do that sometimes. But that's actually very surface. It hasn't gotten good enough
I agree.
yet to really discern your dreams. So that's why one of the things in the dream school is we go and we get into circles and we share it with a group of people and everyone in the circle has an opportunity to say, if this were my dream, I think it would might mean this. And then you can kind of pick and choose what from other people's observations that you might want to take on board about it.
That's really cool. I love talking about dreams and dissecting dreams with my friends, but it's I do feel like having someone who knows you well is very helpful to talk about your dreams with, because they're going to notice some of the more subtle signs that might appear.
And it's like you're trying to discern a message from like a third party, like
Very true.
rather
Like
than
spirit guides.
your friend telling you, rather than your friend telling you like, oh, you always choose these losers, like whatever, like you're not gonna want to hear that, and it
Yeah.
might ruin your friendship. But if you're in your dream, it's showing you this like ridiculous looking guy with like, I don't know, a mustache and like a long neck and a I don't know, like something, and then you both like, oh man, maybe this symbolizes the men you choose are not right for you or something.
Yeah, I have a friend who, like, whenever she's going through up leveling in her relationship dynamics, she has dreams about her exes, and she'll, like, in the dream, she has to break up with the ex, and it's like, oh, like, her brain is forcing her to process like how she's showing up in relationship and what she wants in the future. And I always think that's so fascinating how it's everything works together for our good if we allow it, right? Like if we're open to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So one of my favorite things about knowing you, Christina, has been just seeing you continue to grow and just have so much visibility and use your voice to do beautiful things. But I remember, when we were like connecting during the pandemic and talking about so many different instances, but at the same time, you were gaining so much visibility um, from a lot of people who were aligned with your messaging. And then some people who were, just caught up in the antics of the pandemic and wanted to blame anybody, anybody they could. Um, I'm so curious about like, what was that experience like for you as you gained that visibility? Was there anything that you want to share about your experience, or any transits that you wanted to highlight? I think you told me that there was Pluto was on your midheaven during that time. Is that right?
Well, it had passed my ascendant. Pluto was right on
Okay.
my ascendant when I actually was gaining a lot of momentum as an astrologer, strangely enough, even though that tends to be a very difficult transit. I remember we were talking about
Interesting.
when there was all this like kind of this blow up, basically this big, at the time, well-known astrologer that I kind of collaborated with. I worked in his community, and he got Me Too'd, and those of us pretty much who called him out, then we were attacked by his
Oh,
we have
okay.
his
So that was some
bands
of the
and
drama.
ride or die.
Oh, wow.
That
Okay.
was one piece of drama. Maybe there was another one too. I don't know. Especially when we were all with.
I think part of the drama was you just being Asian during the pandemic.
Oh, yeah, because then there was a lot coming up with race,
Yeah,
and
a whole
and
lot.
I had no problem speaking about race and racism. And it was the first time I think a lot of people, I mean, I started recognizing my own racism too, to a massive degree, even though I never, thought that I would, at the time, I'm not racist, but everyone would say that. And then it
Yeah.
became like, you can't possibly, no one in America anyway, can really say that unless we've really, really
Yeah.
looked at ourselves. But I do remember, yeah, what you were probably talking about was these Pluto experiences are when a lot of times you get really challenged because Pluto can represent like coming up against bigger forces. They say like an immovable force or something like that, or being overwhelmed by greater forces. And, do you rise to the challenge or do you decide to sort of let go? These are some of the options that we have. I always
Yeah.
like to ask clients when they're going through a really difficult Pluto transit to one of the things is to look for where we give our power away, because Pluto is often about disempowerment and empowerment. And usually it challenges us that, oh, you think you're so powerful? Well, let's see how you handle when other people challenge your power. And oftentimes I see that we feel like we're being disempowered when someone else is taking our power away. And no one can take your power away for the
Right.
most part unless you give it away. Like, let's say, for instance, oh my God, I'm going to get fired from my job or something like that. It's like, okay, well, you've given all of your power to this other entity or something like that. Or, you've given all of your, like, only this person can love me, or this person has money control over me. And maybe in the time it really feels that way, but if you really look deeply, do you have other options? And that's where that digging deep and finding your own power comes from. Because a lot of times with Pluto, it strips away our identity because we'll cling to some kind of identity
Yeah.
that's associated with looking a certain way, like having a certain identity, having a certain job or a certain, income or whatever.
100%. Yeah. I'm having Pluto go over my midheaven and
It
my
helps to make us realize that is not us.
yeah, it does. It's so funny because it's like Pluto is in my 10th house right now, and I feel like everything career wise is shifting for me. Of just like, oh, like maybe I don't want to show up in pretty dresses, maybe I want to show up in my Sherpa hoodie instead. Or like, maybe I'm not this, maybe I'm that. And just allowing all of that to fall away and just be part of the experience. But it's not easy.
Yeah. Yeah, and defining yourself for yourself. That's another thing. It's like, especially with Pluto going through the 10th house, it's like defining your career for yourself, your public image and your life
Yeah.
direction, because the 10th house is about where I'm aiming for. I always like to think of like Prince, the artist formerly known as Prince.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was born with Pluto conjunct his midheaven, and having a planet conjunct an angle, especially an outer planet like Pluto, is major. So for him, it seemed like it manifested in he was here to challenge,
Yeah.
the idea of what a musician, a pop star, a rock star, a man, and the glamour, the power that a man can have. But also, remember when you're probably too young to remember, but like I'm sure you've seen that, like he I think there's pictures of he wrote slave on his face. I think he was the guest on Saturday Night Live when he was the
I think
musical
I vaguely
guest.
remember something
He
about
was
that.
in Yeah, he was challenging his record company. What was it? Sony or whoever. He was with a big record company, but he felt like they were not paying him what he earned, right? They were like basically exploiting him. And he was one of the few to ever first stand up to the record companies. And he was kind of all alone, right? Because you have to battle them all alone. I think like George Michael did
Yeah.
this some like later, and other people I think followed suit later. But my understanding is Prince was one of the first, if not the first, to challenge, the powers that be, to
I love
say,
that.
I'm not gonna take it anymore. And even though I believe he lost the lawsuit, he he still did it so that he managed to, like, just basically get out of their exploitation. I don't remember what he did, but he was just like, "I'm not making new music for you. I'm not promoting things anymore." That's where he changed his name to a symbol because he wasn't gonna promote anymore. Like,
Oh,
all
that's
that
hilarious. I had no idea that was connected.
all that was like a major rebellion. So it was all about his rebellion. And so, Pluto lies there like because you were saying you're having the transit of Pluto through the 10th house. He was born with Pluto on the midheaven. So it's Pluto where you have it natally is sort of lying in wait for that moment of, that volcano to erupt. And by transit, you can see where there's a potential for a real like renovation. I think of renovation with Pluto, like think about an old house that needs to be gutted and like everything removed and practically destroyed, taken down to the bare bones, so that you can start fresh and rebuild from there.
If this episode has been resonating with you, I have a special offer for you. Right now, I am doing free family constellation sessions. So if you're somebody who's like, wow, this is really resonating, you're in the midst of a transition, you're looking for a way to still make money while breaking through perhaps an income ceiling or some limiting beliefs about whether or not you're ready to be an authority or you're, not sure what your offer is, I'd love for you to sign up for a free family constellation session with me. I'm going through my certification right now, and I am loving using it as a way to build authentic community. No sales pressure, just purely an opportunity to connect and get to know each other more deeply. So if that feels like you, go ahead and click the link in the show notes. Now back to our episode. So did you feel like Pluto helped empower you in these situations where it sounds like to me that Pluto can have this opportunity to make you into a trailblazer if you choose to accept it?
Yeah, I think, well, it also depends on, how it's aspecting, if it's aspecting any planets and what it's doing to them. Um, I would say that it'll first challenge your assumption, your assumptions in that area, because we tend to have assumptions about, like, I have something fixed, this is who I am in this area, this is who I am in my career, this is who I am in my identity, this is who I am in my reputation. And it may completely challenge that. And I think the most important moments with Pluto is, I think of, because you know how they say how Pluto is like what is it, death and resurrection,
Death, birth,
or
rebirth.
rejuvenation, or yeah. So it's like, what's the word I'm looking? Yeah, resurrection, whatever. Um, and so think about those moments when we are born. When we're in the womb, and when the contractions start, and we are, on our way, and we're born. We are only with ourselves. We can go through that canal ourselves. And the same is when we die. Only we can, we're going alone. All the stuff that we accumulated, we're not taking it with us. We are going alone. And I feel like a lot of Pluto transits can have that same sense of, it's you and your soul. You know, what do you say to yourself in those moments about who you are, even when nobody else agrees with, with who you are? Or I've seen so many times people be accused of things. A lot of times it's falsely accused,
Ooh.
and if people falsely accuse you, they see you differently. They see you as bad or evil or wrong or whatever. And it's those moments where you have to be with yourself to define who I really am, and not really be defined by other people and their sort of projections on you.
Yeah.
So there's something there about that level of authenticity. And then from there, from that place, when you fully know who you are, regardless of how people are going to judge you or what they're going to think about you, to find that's true empowerment, to find a way forward that you chose. So, like when you were saying that I was having all of this, I had a big profile, and then everybody was saying I was mean because I was like standing up for myself and my ethnicity. I mean, come on. And, but at the end of the day, I knew what my truth was, and, it didn't and there are some people who would never they've never walked in my shoes. They never knew. Some people never know what it's like, to be, um it's like to be a mixed race woman, and even my own family members, like
Right.
they don't understand what it's like. So that can really be about finding your own truth, your truth at that like really deep level.
I just want to commend you too for standing up and speaking before it was trendy and popular. Uh, because you were the only astrologer that I followed that was openly speaking out, protecting others, standing up for others, standing up for yourself. And to this day, it still, brings a tear to my eye because it was such a bright spot in what was like a difficult time for everybody. So I just want to, thank you for your work.
Mm. Well, I have to thank you because you were one of the very few people who also stood up for me and stood by me and supported me in this very dark time. The other thing I would say with Pluto is sometimes it can give you power and it can test your own power. And they say that power corrupts, and if you don't know how to wield power that you have, and be grateful for it and know that you have the ability to share your gifts, or you can also do harm. It can be
Right.
powerfully creative or powerfully destructive, that it's just worth sitting with people because I was just thinking what a shame it was that this guy, whatever went on in his mind, he lost so many people who really cared about him and cared about his work and everything like that. And so it just makes you think that, especially when we go in these worlds where whether you're a coach or whether you're in anything in metaphysical, people actually project sort of a parental figure on you.
They do. They do.
And
I
I
get a
get a
lot
lot
of
and
mom stuff.
and in a way it is worth holding, to a certain extent, knowing that you don't have to be everybody's mother, but if we're in the helping professions, then there is a responsibility there.
I agree. I'm very curious about when you're talking about people wielding power. There's a lot of spiritual entrepreneurs that I know who are fearful of that. They're fearful of having power, of having money, almost even free time. It's almost like they're afraid that they will wield it poorly. Is there anything that you would say to those people who have good intentions, but maybe don't trust themselves at that level yet?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think when we're in this space, as spiritual entrepreneurs, is we always do need to be checking in with ourselves
I
because,
agree.
we can feel icky when we see people like out there just really selling, 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 and seeming to get off the path. But at the same time, we also have to realize that we also have to fill our cup first and also not judge so much. We don't know. I don't know how somebody else's life looks like off of, their Instagram or whatever.
Right.
Um, I mean, I have a friend who's a very successful astrologer. She really grew her YouTube like really quickly and is amazing. And she's taking care of like a mother who has dementia, a son who's also like I think is struggling and trying to get into college, and she's a single mom and all this. I mean, you would never know looking at her. Um, but what I admire about her is that she takes care of business. It's a business. Like she knows
Yeah.
that she came from like Silicon Valley. So she knows that mindset, but that also it's not just any business. That there's a reason why people fear or don't trust people in the metaphysical space because charlatans, been
Oh, yeah.
around as long as there's been, astrologers and healers and things like that. So we always do have to hold ourselves to a higher standard. Um, but there's so much opportunity now that we can really connect with and help others. And I think whenever you are in a position to help people, you have a duty to do that. You really, really have a duty and a purpose. And it's one of the greatest purposes to have is to be able to help other people. And so I think when you come to it and just remember you're here to serve, that can really make everything a lot clearer. It's like, okay, I'm here to serve. I have something of value. A fair exchange, is about right livelihood. But it's a constant like rebalancing and then every time you level up, you have to check in with yourself again, because there's nothing like, shooting up and feeling like you're suddenly invincible. And then, and just when you get at the high point, you get knocked down because you weren't standing on any true ground.
Yeah, there wasn't a solid foundation. I know the feeling. I know both feelings of like you're shooting up and you're like, it's so good. Wait a second. But then also you're shooting up and you're like, wait, actually, I'm not sure if I'm ready for this big change. So it's very interesting. But yeah, checking in with yourself, kind of going back to that Pluto lesson of you and your soul and like how do you want to handle this? How do you want to define yourself? Are you going to overcome this obstacle or are you going to buckle?
Yeah, and like what you said about like not being sure if you can handle a big change. I think that that's where like every new moon gives us this opportunity to realign and a lot of people like to use it for manifesting and that's great
Yeah.
too, but first, before you manifest, make sure you're bringing in what you want and what you're ready for. You know, you may think, oh, I'm ready for like to be the next big like psychic medium like us, But then if you aren't really aligned really for it, if you haven't really been visualizing or acting as if or living as if you were, I mean, think about like, I don't know, Justin Bieber. Apparently he couldn't stop like making music and singing and things like that his mother just literally had to like capture and put it on like YouTube because he was already doing it. He was already in his mind. He was like on stage, like sold out concerts, as like a
I love
child.
that.
I mean, that's an extreme, but that's where the moon cycles, I love to take the new moon as a time to realign because you're realigning with, it's a reminder of what season are we at? What time in our life are we at? The moon and the sun, are coming in this opportunity for this great marriage and alignment of the unconscious and the consciousness. And what is my inside saying I'm ready for? And you're calling it in. And not like it's not here, if it can't get here fast enough. It's no, what am I calling in? And you may be keeping yourself small by not being, the outside is saying, I'm ready, I'm ready, I'm ready. But unless there's an internal match, the universe is still not going to serve it up until that attunement is happening from the inside.
I agree. I think for me, what I've noticed that it works easier for me at least. And I know it also has to do on when you were born, which moon you should be manifesting under. That a full moon for me shows me everything that's out of whack in my life that doesn't line up with my dream. And then I'm like, oh, okay, this is what we need to sort through and work on in order to manifest essentially. So it's like I focus on like, what do we need to release first in order to bring in what we're trying to build and a solid foundation for it. So
Yeah, absolutely. I love that because the full moon is things are brought to light, right? And it's so funny. My sister, who does not believe in any of this woo-woo stuff at all,
wow.
but at one time, she's a nurse, but at one time she was working in the emergency room, and I said, "Okay, well, full moons are crazy, though, right?" And she was like, "Oh yeah." Like because that's when they get the babies suddenly being born and things
Oh
like,
wow.
gunshot wounds or whatever, like coming in like and so things come to light and it's good to know at the very least the new moon and the full moon because the new moon is the time to go inward to sort of check in to sort it's really to sort of realign and sort things. I mean, honestly, people who really know like astrological magic, you're not really manifesting until the first quarter moon because the moon is too dark at the new moon to be
Yeah.
really like calling in anything really. I would wait until like the first quarter moon, which is like a week later. And then at the full moon, as you said, yeah, it's a polarization. So it's usually kind of uncomfortable because the moon is in the opposite archetype of the sun, but it's illuminating something, it's illuminating these extremes. And if it's aligned with where your own, personal planets are, your luminaries, then it can show you some potential alignments or misalignments at that time too.
So I'm really curious, Christina, what is exciting you lately? What's lighting you up and igniting your passions in life?
Oh, well, I'm just so obsessed with Uranus having just entered Gemini for a few reasons. Last fall, summer was when it sort of dipped in there. And of course, Uranus has like a, what, 80 something year transit.
84, I
So,
think.
yeah.
Yeah.
Unless you're in your, yeah, I think 84, 83, 84. And so unless you're 84, you wouldn't have experienced it yet. So it's new to us. And last, summer, we had a little sort of taste of it. And now that it's in this sign for the next 7.5 years, it's going to challenge us in many ways because it's in the sign of Gemini, which is Mercury's sign, and it's an air sign. So things are that Uranian energy is going to be moving faster, right? Just because when you think of this chaotic energy going from the stuck Earth sign in Taurus, which, it did some damage there too, but it also offered,
Didn't it?
creative breakthroughs and new opportunities. But in Gemini, that's information, that's our ideas, that's our alliances. And, and also it's trining Pluto and sextile Neptune. So we're seeing all of this like innovation in the world is coming at such a fast speed. We're to the point where we're literally just like, we cannot be surprised at anything when we hear anything. We just see like, oh yeah, aliens. Okay, that too. Well, give me just think, we've got enough going on. Where it used to be like, oh my God, aliens. Now we're just like, that is what, that's also on the bingo card. But where it's coming into your life, I mean, when it comes to the outer planets, I always like to look at whole sign houses. So for me, it's my sixth house, which is about work and habits and service and health and healing and things like that. And I'm a Capricorn, so I like things. I like my habits to be fixed. I like to know where I'm going. I like to know what I'm doing. And I've got to get uncomfortable with, or just get comfortable with being uncomfortable and not knowing what the changes might be, what's being asked of me, what's being needed from me. But there's also always these opportunities with these planets. And with Uranus, I think really our best bet is to go with the excitement, is to welcome it, to welcome it as much as we can. Um, because it is breaking free something. It wants to liberate what has been stuck or what has been neglected. And, Gemini is very much about how we communicate and the way that we communicate and connect with one another.
Yeah.
That's important because we're social beings. Humans need to feel connected. And so all of that is going to change in new ways. And so I think it's just about being more sort of mutable, our mutable friends out there. They're the ones that we're going to look to, help us find ways to kind of go with the flow when it comes to Uranus and Gemini.
Yeah, I'm a little nervous about it because I don't have any activity in my mutable house. So I'm like, oh gosh, we're gonna have to learn some new skills here.
Yes, well, we're all learning new skills. I mean, even just the other day when I was trying to make a little reel and stuff, and I'm like, and anytime they change any of these icons where it's at, it just like drives me nuts because then I can't find anything. It'll take me hours. But I just tell myself, okay, if these like 12-year-olds and 17-year-olds can do this, I can do it. It's supposed to be user friendly. It's supposed to be made for a child. So, but it's also, there's Uranus and Gemini, but we also have to remember the whole rest of the zodiac and the whole rest of our natal charts and everything. It's still valid. There's just
Yeah.
other areas that may be emphasized. But I feel like if we feel too frazzled or, we can't keep up or things like that, then we can take some breaks. We can take, find some spaces of retreat. As a matter of fact, I think what was really sort of disturbing about when Uranus went into Taurus, Taurus tends to be one of the spaces that's like our sanctuary. Taurus is about feeling safe, about having shelter. Um, and that a lot of times has been not as, it hasn't, we haven't felt as safe, or we haven't felt like we've had those sanctuaries to go to. So now that Uranus has moved on to a different sign, I think we can go back to some of those things and some of those practices where we can return to, when we think of Taurus, it's the physical body, the things that keep us grounded and feeling peaceful and sheltered. And so trying to find those spaces when we can, when we need to take a break from all the, outer planet madness.
Yes, I heard that Uranus and Gemini actually activates the nervous system more. So it's really exciting to hear, okay, these old practices that may have felt inaccessible in those moments, like now you might be able to return back to them and get some nurturance from them. Because I've heard that a lot with people that this used to work for me. I used to journal all the time, morning pages. And for some reason I stopped. And now this gives a little bit of perspective if you're one of those people.
Yeah, and what's so funny is I just my favorite podcast right now to listen to, aside from yours and my own, is the telepathy tapes.
Oh, I've heard of it.
Have you heard of the telepathy tape? It's so good. And so it's just amazing, mind-blowing stuff, which is, I think, also kind of the world that we're entering to. Maybe I'm hoping that people will it'll start to spread more into the collective consciousness about what's possible about telepathy and all of these things of ways of communicating. But what was interesting is, she has these ads that she runs through the podcast, and one of them was, there's some company that does energy clearing. You know how there's companies where, like, you can get, like, therapy, like, over the phone or something like that? There's a bunch
Wow.
of therapists and you just pick one.
Yeah, like
And there's
BetterHelp
one
or
that's, like,
something.
energy clearing or energy healing, like, and I'm like, "That is so great." I just
Welcome to the future.
I think it's time that we have more people doing that, and we need it more because, like you said, with the nervous system all, I will say I have seen clients in the past who, if they've had transits of Uranus to either their north node or their moon or something like that, then that can be time where the nervous system can be really overloaded, And so I think it's really important that we, sort of plan for some extra time to slow down and to take breaks because we're only human, right? And, we can't be expected to, we do need to speed up and be more innovative in how we're thinking and things like that. But at the end of the day, we are only human and humans have biological needs. So that's where going back into Taurus, I think, can be helpful.
Yeah, this is very interesting to me because my son, who was born during one of your eclipse circles that I was a part of, he has a North Node in Gemini. And so he's been more active lately. And so I am wondering if that there's some sort, he's feeling the energy. And yeah, we'll be an interesting 7 years.
Yeah, and so I wonder, I would look at when that is happening and, when it gets closer to that exact, and see about, for him, I wonder if there's something around, do you know what house it is, the Gemini rules?
Yeah, I think it's his. Okay, so he's Sagittarius rising. So I know this because my brain works, but my brain is so tired. And say yes, yeah, 7. Oh my goodness, yeah.
Oh, so really opposite, yeah. And, okay, so it'll go over his descendant too at some point. Um, so I would think, because we think of seventh house as others, And
Yeah.
Gemini has a lot to do with things like our friends and our siblings and our people like siblings and things like that. So maybe, and oftentimes when Uranus goes through the seventh house, I've seen it so much in client work is maybe suddenly somebody comes into your life and suddenly they're like your best friend, or, in his case, being a
Oh.
child, but, an adult, maybe suddenly they decide like they're gonna, like, this is their partner or something like that. And and it can be maybe someone, the type of people that come into your life that they normally wouldn't have connected with before. Maybe they share, especially in Gemini, maybe they share some new ideas that are interesting, or a way of speaking or a way of communicating. Um, Maybe people with, that speak a different language or something like that. And it can also be shifting of alliances. Maybe suddenly you're friends with these people, and then maybe you need to be friends with, this other group of people and things like that. So it can be, there's very like cocktail party energy, I think, with with Gemini in general. Um, but I would think with the North Node for him, to be open to making new friends and alliances and groups and things like that. And also maybe even learning something new, learn whether it be a new language or something that really activates his mind and where he can like maybe connect with others through.
I love that. Yeah, we're definitely going to be using that at home. The learning and you're learning a new language. That sounds wonderful. It sounds, I feel like, yeah, very Gemini, very Gemini. I love that. Thank you, Christina. That's a beautiful insight for everyone listening. How can all of our listeners find you after, hearing all of this wisdom? They're obviously going to want to connect to you more deeply. Where can they do that?
Yes, well, I have my podcast. It's on YouTube at Radiant Astrology, or they can find me on Instagram at Radiant Astrology. Also, my podcast is on all of the podcast apps. Or they can visit me on radiantastrology.com. Let's see. Right now, I have a course that's launching this Saturday, May 16th. It's a 4-week course taking our group through the outer planet transits and looking at our natal charts. So it's kind of like, rather than just getting one reading, you're essentially getting 4 like readings like in a group. So we thought that that would be something that people would want, like some more support in kind of a small group setting. And I'm hoping to do more programs like that if that one turns out to be successful. Otherwise, they can visit radiantastrology.com and sign up for my free newsletter. And they'll get updates on any of my next programs and just free content about what is happening in the cosmos and how they can really reflect on it for their own personal development and insights into the cosmos, basically.
So we had some technical difficulties with the internet while we were recording. We didn't realize there was a Uranus cazimi. So the sun and Uranus were conjunct, and it got a little tricky and it got a little funky in the recording. But such is Uranus. It's always there to shake things up, to make life more interesting, and ultimately to lead us to a breakthrough. So I just wanted to add, I'm not sure if this made it into the episode, but I have, to speak from experience, I have been a part of Christina's circles. I have learned from her for over a decade, so that's pretty wild. Um, and I highly recommend all of her circles, her courses. I read her emails. I love her podcast. Check it all out. You won't be disappointed, especially if you want to use astrology to better understand your evolutionary journey. And what more transformative of a journey than being an entrepreneur, right? So, if you enjoyed the episode, please make sure that you reach out to Christina, and also go ahead and check out the show notes for a free family constellation session with me as I am learning and training in family constellations and becoming a facilitator. I would love to get to know you one-on-one, no cost, of course, and just connect with zero sales pressure as we build community together. Thank you so much for being here. I'll see you next time. Bye.